Coming up on this edition of Cogeco News, some troubles for North Bay's Jack Garland Airport, an update on COVID-19 in the region governed by the health unit, and the Lakers still recruiting, although a season is still not necessarily happening. Hello again, everybody. Happy Friday and welcome to another edition of Cogeco News. I am Greg Esterbrooks. First on this night, until just about 2.5 months ago, North Bay's Jack Garland Airport was supposed to be a centerpiece in the future economic development of North Bay and really North Bay and area. Now, 3 months later into the pandemic, that standing has been significantly damaged. And one local politician says the very future of Jack Garland Airport remains in some doubt. Clark Heipel has the complete update.
Our first angle of this in-depth story concerning North Bay's airport comes from the provincial government. Late last summer, Nipissing MPP Vic Fedeli announced $2.4 million to help fund the Crosswinds runway repair.
Well, we can never forget the fact that North Bay is one of 4 10,000-foot runways in all of Ontario, one of only 15 in all of the country. So it will always be an important piece of Canadian infrastructure. Now, what will happen locally? A lot of it's going to depend on Air Canada, who have suspended flights right now, and or any other airline that the city can try to attract into the city of North Bay. I think that'll be important.
What about federal funding to assist with airport operations? We'll hear Mark King a bit later on, North Bay City Councillor, very critical of Nipissing-Timiskaming MP Anthony Rota. First, here's what Mr. Rota had to say.
The future of the airport is still manageable, and once we get out of this, I think we'll be okay. The city has gone on very strong and supported the airport, and it continues to go on. And there's been contact between the Ministry of Transportation, Minister of Finance, as well as the airport management and the mayor. It's something that exists right across the country, where you have smaller airports like the Jack Garland Airport that belong to the city. They're not federal assets, and they're basically there. And I believe that we're going to have to look at it very seriously. I know I've been lobbying both ministers on this, and they understand the issue, and eventually something should be coming down to help.
Last year, provincial government stepped up with funding, and you have been not shy to express your disappointment over the lack of federal funding for the runway and subsequent airport. Have you talked to MP Anthony Rota since you voiced your displeasure?
No, I haven't, Clark. I mean, you put your best foot forward with respect to the media, and obviously he listens to that stuff. He's got an obligation as our MP to help figure out how to get around this particular problem, and I would expect him to provide some support or even direction, with respect to how we proceed. And the other part of this we need to be very, very careful with is to recognize that a lot of these services that are provided up there now are part and parcel of provincial requirements with respect to fire control. These types of issues are a burden on the property taxpayer. And I just don't see at this point how we can continue down the road that we've been down for some time.
But the bigger issue is we don't want to lose the airport. We want to keep an airport in North Bay. It's important for businesses to assist with the economy. There are a number of excellent jobs affiliated with airport operations, NAVCAN, Canada College. Combined, the salaries from the airport operations are about $2 million per year into the economy. We've been able to tap into some of the government-sponsored COVID emergency wage supplements. The airport staff have been approved for that. Between the airport board's reserves, between the money that was already allocated last year towards the airport operations, right now those funds should cover the airport operations even without passenger revenues until early fall. The setup for the airport is that it's based on passenger landing fees. It's buried in everyone's ticket. You don't pay attention to it anymore, but that really is what funds the airport. So Air Canada and Bearskin both having suspended their service until at least September the 7th at this point, and expect it will be longer than that. The airport revenues are really, 80% down. We do still have some tenants that we lease space to. There are some nominal fees coming in from the people that are still using the airport.
Premier Doug Ford wants more COVID-19 coronavirus testing in Ontario, and Vic Fideli is, of course, in lockstep with Ford on this big issue. Ford says he wants to be, quote, an 800-pound gorilla, unquote, on this file, and Fideli says testing must be boosted so Ontarians and the government knows where they stand.
We get the reports in from all the regions. I look at those. I look at the personal protective equipment numbers by hospital as well. Every morning we look at these and we do an analysis. So we've got great data to follow, and what those data tell us are that testing did not reach the 19,000 numbers that the Premier wants again. So he's pushing very, very hard. There's a lot of different reasons why. I've been talking to our local health experts to determine what can we do here in Nipissing riding to increase testing as well. So we have gathered their thoughts on that and forwarded those to the Minister of Health just this morning. Yeah, I don't know that it was the test kits that were the problem as much as the actual testing and the lab work that follows up on the testing that were the issue. But I know that he is going to be like the 800-pound gorilla on this. This is his first and top priority right now.
So phase one is complete in regards to the partial reopening of Ontario business. Of course, many people fear that there'll be a spike in COVID-19 tests because people are starting to slowly get out and get about. Fideli says there has to be a balance.
People need to know that they have an income, need to know that there's work for them, need to know that there's employment for them. So it's going to be a big part of the turnaround is having the numbers. It all has to start with health, but a 2 to 4 week period between opening stage 1 and stage 2. So that next stage, it really has to, we really have to see those numbers flatten before we're allowed to open up things like hair salons and more people to be put together in a gathering. A lot has to happen. And as I've said before, we've had 14.5 million people make a lot of sacrifices to get us where we are, but we seem to have plateaued, but that number needs to fall. So the practicing social distancing, as much as you've heard that, we can't let up.
But what about when the so-called phase 3 arrives and all businesses and manufacturing outlets are open? Will they be able to get anywhere close to previous levels of retail and manufacturing?
It's going to be a very different way to work. There are some businesses that are thriving today, some that aren't yet opened, and there are some that are doing an exceptional amount of work as well. If you look at the grocery sector, they're still doing very, very well in terms of the volume of business that they have. I've talked to the chemical industry. They've done exceedingly well over the COVID period, but they're concerned about where the future, where their sales are going to be in the future once everybody has their shelves stocked.
The issue of keeping Canadians and Canadian business afloat to survive is a federal issue for the most part. Anthony Rota, the MP for Nipissing-Timiskaming, says, yes, there will be a big deficit and a deficit issue for years, but the government had to step up to aid those millions of Canadians in need.
Well, that's up to finance and the finance minister, and as well as the prime minister when they're working together. When we look at what's going on out there, there are people who are accumulating debt. There's no question there, and that's why some of these programs were put out to help them keep their head above water during the bad times. And hopefully that when we hit the road, we're going to be running, and everything will come together fairly well, and demand will pick up, and people will go back to work. Keeping people working, whether they're actually being on location or maybe working a bit from home. The nice thing about that is employers will keep their employees, and when things get better and we come out of this lockdown, then suddenly they don't have to go looking for new employees or start retraining. The employees have jobs and the employers have people out there. Now, let's take it at a national level. Yeah, we're accumulating a lot of debt. There's no question there. The deficit this year is going to be very large. But the other question to ask yourselves, if we didn't do this, what would happen? I mean, the debt would be taken on by individuals and bankruptcies. We'd basically see a depression in any case.
And that depression extends to tourism. There really isn't any. And with the Canada-US border shut down except for essential traffic, that won't be changing anytime soon.
Well, I think it's very important that we take care of Canadians. And transportation between Canada and the US has been curtailed, as blocked basically, except for commercial. Commercial transportation has continued to go back and forth because we do have supply lines that are very important to commerce.
Let's move on to the COVID-19 by the numbers board provided by the North Bay Parry Sound District Health Unit. On May 22nd, 4 people are in isolation, self-isolation. That is an increase or decrease of 2. 1 death still reported. 20 cases resolved, 25 cases in all. Wildlife collisions always spike when the weather gets warmer as animals start to come out of the forest. Earlier this week, we got a video from a woman involved in a collision between herself, her vehicle, and a moose. The Ontario Provincial Police adds that this is an issue that drivers have to possess laser focus on.
5-7 feet tall, they land on your car and they could crush you. And we've had several collisions over the years in our area with people hitting moose and dying.
That is Shona Cameron of the Northeast Region OPP. Earlier this week, 2 young women traveling back to North Bay hit a moose on Highway 11 and lived to tell the tale, just minor injuries. Unfortunately, many other instances in the past, these collisions have led to fatalities.
Yeah, absolutely. North Bay OPP investigates dozens of collisions a month involving wildlife. So moose, deer, bear, could be any form of wildlife. But I think one of the main contributing factors is speed. People driving too fast that they're not seeing it. At night, they're driving faster than their headlights. And other factors are you just don't see them. At night, they're really hard to see. People really need to slow down, especially at night when they're driving on the highways. They need to scan the entire highway for the little shiny eyes that you can see when you're driving. That's all you're going to see. You might not see any movement. You might not see anything else except for just 2 tiny little eyes on the side of the highway. If you can see those, you're good. But it's really tough to see wildlife at night.
When vehicles and wildlife meet, drivers may be faced with a split-second decision: swerve or put on the brakes.
With moose and deer, if there's a moose or deer in the middle of the road, do you swerve? Do you hit it? That's really tough. Like if you're driving a small car, you're not going to want to hit a moose. That moose are huge.
When we return after this break, we profile a man who was really a one-man army in awareness of dealing with depression. Now he has some assistance. That after this. Welcome back, everybody. For the Love of Woody has been a one-man crusade against depression. Mark Caldwell lost his father, Woody, to suicide several years ago. Caldwell started an individual awareness campaign that was very successful, but now it's even better. He has many partners to help.
It is a piece of news I cannot even begin to imagine receiving. Your father has committed suicide. That's the news the then 32-year-old Mark Caldwell received while on shift at the Sub Place on November 30th, 2016. Mark's father, Elwood Robert Woody Caldwell, cut his own life short at just 59 years of age after his secret battle with depression. Through the unimaginable pain, Caldwell got to work.
And ever since then, I've been raising awareness and funds for mental health and suicide prevention in our area. I've raised over $70,000 and counting. I don't even really know exactly anymore. But for Defeat Depression, it means that I'm one of our highest fundraisers nationally. And I'm hoping again to be the top fundraiser for this year. I've supported a lot of different initiatives locally, but it's nice to be working on a national level to help people who need assistance.
Now, this is virtual, so there is still a connection, albeit not face-to-face. Can you tell us how you're kind of adapting to the time?
It's ironic that with social media we are now more connected than ever, yet we all feel more socially apart. So we are encouraging people to participate virtually, meaning you do your own walk, your own run, your own bike ride, take your dog out on the path, whatever it may be that helps you defeat depression, and show that to your friends and family that, you know, it just takes a little bit of effort, but sometimes just getting out, getting about can help ease the burden. And so on May 30th this year, we'll have Defeat Depression Day, which is a virtual event which will be live streamed at 11 a.m. Eastern Time nationally, online for everyone to participate in. There's going to be presenters, lived experience, presentations, and musicians, and a lot of good stuff.
Breakdown has arrived yet again here on Cogeco News. When we come back, Mr. Hyper will have the weather and who knows what other adventures he'll be taking you on right after this.
Weather is brought to you by Canadore College. Great things happen here.
Welcome back to Cogeco News. I'm Clark Heipel here down at North Bay's waterfront. I'm here for your 5-day weather forecast brought to you by Canadore College. Also here to remind you to wear red on Fridays to show your support for the men and women of the Canadian Armed Forces. And today and days following, we are keeping Captain Jen Casey in our thoughts and in our prayers. A life lost much too soon. Well, here in North Bay, it's feeling more like Key West. This weather is just off the hook. Today, mid-20s with sun. Tomorrow, high 20s with sun. When COVID isn't a thing, people spend thousands of dollars to get weather like this and a scenery like this. So if you can, stay socially distant, go on outside and enjoy the outdoors this weekend. Let's take a look at that 5-day forecast brought to you by Canadore College. Venturing overnight on this Friday night, a clear, mild low of 11. On Saturday, the 23rd of May, look at that. We're in the Caribbean, for heaven's sakes. High 29, low 15, sun and only sun in the sky, and the UV index will be topping the charts, so use your sunscreen. Sunday, it had to rain sometimes, 60% chance of showers, high 25, low 15. The mild temperatures continue with chance of showers on Monday, high 23, low 15. And Tuesday, more the same, clouds, chance of showers, 23 and 17. Looking back on Thursday, it was a beautiful day. We had a high of 25 and a low of 6. The normals are somewhat cooler at 20 and 7 for the high and low this time of May. Well, there you have it. There is your 5-day weather picture. My plans for tomorrow, teeing off at 9 a.m. and then 2:30, Greg and I have a tennis match at the North Bay Tennis Granite Club where he will lose in straight sets. Let's send it to a quick break. Greg will have your sportscast right after this.
Sports is brought to you by Tag Construction for all your construction needs.
Keep talking Clark Heupel. Sports teams are recruiting for Ontario universities, and of course that has to go on because there is supposed to be lots of sports in the fall, including hockey, but who knows at this point if there will be and what form those leagues and seasons will take. The Lakers' Mike McParland talks to us about the new norm and the 2020 recruiting class.
Most of the prospective athletes have been good, and recruiting to this point has been okay. We still would like to add a goalie, a top end goalie, and we're still talking with a couple. And we'd like to add if we could find a scorer that could play in our top 6. I think we'll be set. We'll be very competitive next year. The 6 guys that we've already named will definitely improve our team and improve our depth. Parker Bowman out of Powassan had a big year, played a bit in the Quebec League, is great. Chad Deneau finished the season with the battalion. We're looking forward to him coming to school and developing and being a key player for us right from year 1. And goalie Brett Epp from Alberta played a couple years at NCAA. We're looking for him to come in and be one of those guys that helps solidify our position in goal. And then we took a couple guys out of the Northern League. We took Josh Anderson in Timmins, who played. He also played in the Quebec League with Rimouski, the same as Parker Bowman previously. He's a great skater. We hope that he's able to come in and have an impact with us as well.
Now, of course, coaches can't bring players to town for face-to-face interviews or give them a tour of the campus or the city where that campus is located. And of course, there's the issue of online classes coming in the fall, perhaps. Will that be an impediment to having an on-ice season?
Well, it's not just hockey. The athletic directors haven't voted on what the OUA sport outlook looks like for the fall. We have announced that classes will be online in the fall, whereby I believe most schools have done that same thing. It's not just Nipissing standing alone doing that. I think that's pretty much unanimous in Ontario. But that has two sides to it. Again, we have to follow the rules of the health minister. But if things ever get back to semi-normal and classes are online, it would definitely help in terms of practices. As it is, when we practice, we don't always have every player at practice because they have to be in class. That's their mandate, that school comes first. So there are some practices we don't have all the players, but with classes online and you being able to see them at any time you want, it would sure improve our practice quality and quantity of players we had there by having everybody every practice.
Before we go, one quick note we mentioned yesterday, it's worth mentioning again today, that the city of North Bay has shut down Memorial Drive for not pedestrians, but drivers. So you won't see this, but you see lots of folks being able to walk up and down the beautiful area that makes North Bay so special. Again, social distancing, unless you're there with somebody who is obviously living in your house or somebody in your family that lives with you. Same thing, I guess. So enjoy the great weather on Saturday. Sunday doesn't look all that great, but it could change between now and then. What won't change is we're going to give you a fond farewell. And that is it for Cogeco News for this week. And thanks so much for joining us here at Your TV North Bay. And we'll see you again on Monday.